My twin sister showed up at my door at midnight, her face a mess of bruises. Her husband had been beating her again, but he refused to divorce her or let her go. That night, staring at the woman who shared my face but not my fate, I made a decision that would change both our lives. We would switch places. I would move into their house pretending to be her and find out what he was hiding. I thought I was ready for anything, but after 1 week living in that house, I discovered something I never could have imagined. Before the story really begins, do me a favor. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and tell me what you would have done in my place. And if you like dark, twisty stories like this one, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so we can keep this channel growing and bring you even more insane, true story style content. Now, let me tell you how I ended up walking into a mansion that felt more like a snake pit. My name is Claire. I'm a freelance graphic designer, and my life until that night was tidy and predictable. My apartment in a high-rise downtown was my little sanctuary, minimalist, clean, quiet. Outside, the city was drowning in rain, the kind that turns the streets into mirrors and makes traffic lights look dreamy and soft. It was almost 11. I had finally closed my laptop, ready to call it a night, when the buzzer went off. Not once, not twice, but over and over, shrill and panicked, as if someone were leaning on it with their whole weight. I frowned, my heart already speeding up. Nobody visited me this late. I checked the intercom, and all I saw was a figure, drenched, head bowed, finger stabbing the buzzer again and again. "Who is it?" I asked, trying to sound firm. At first there was no answer, just a sound that might have been a muffled sob under the hiss of rain. I unlocked the main door and cracked mine open. The figure stumbled inside, almost collapsing on my hallway floor. I recognized her instantly, even beneath the soaked coat, the crooked headscarf, and the dirt. It was my twin, Rachel. But not the Rachel I knew. Her scarf was askew, her hair tangled and damp, her clothes smeared with mud. One side of her mouth was split and darkening to purple. One eye was swollen, nearly shut, the skin around it bruised in deep, ugly colors. "Oh my God, Rach," I whispered, grabbing her before she fell. Every step she took toward my couch came with a hiss of pain. She cradled her left arm as if it might snap. I sat her down, ran for my first aid kit and a towel, and tried to keep my hands from shaking as I wiped the blood from my own sister's face. "What happened? Who did this to you?" My voice cracked between anger and horror, but I already knew the answer. She flinched when I said his name. "Was it Adam?" At that, her composure shattered. She burst into tears, her whole body trembling. Between sobs, she told me how the man she'd married 3 years earlier, the charming young businessman everyone praised, had slowly turned into a monster. It had started with raised voices, then shoves, then slaps. Tonight, he'd snapped completely. He'd taken her phone, locked every way out, calling her ungrateful and crazy. She'd finally smashed a guest room window and climbed out into the rain. "Why don't you leave him? Why don't you call the police?" I demanded as I pressed an ice pack to her eye. Rachel gave a tiny, broken laugh. "I tried," she whispered. "I told him I wanted a divorce. He laughed in my face. He said I'd never get away from him, that I'm tied to him through Granddad's inheritance, that if I ever tried to go to court, he'd destroy me, destroy you, destroy our parents. He said he'd rather see me dead or locked up than free." The way she said it made a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just domestic violence. There was something bigger hiding underneath. I settled her in my guest room, helped her into dry clothes, and gave her painkillers. Exhaustion finally dragged her into a restless, wheezing sleep. I went back to the living room and sat where she had just been, staring at the faint, rusty stain her blood had left on the cushion. My anger cooled into something sharper, like glass. In the dark window, I caught my reflection. And for a second, it was hers. Same cheekbones, same jawline, same eyes. Except mine was still bright, while his cruelty had dimmed hers. "He won't divorce me. I'm tied to his inheritance." Her words echoed in my head. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same body. The only difference between us was in our eyes and the way we carried ourselves. I'd always been the blunt, stubborn one, the twin who fought back. Rachel had been gentle, eager to please. "You don't want to let her go, Adam," I murmured to my reflection. "Fine. Then you won't be dealing with her anymore. You'll be dealing with me." The thought was reckless, insane, and terrifying, but it made a cruel kind of sense. If he refused to let her out of that house, then someone had to walk in and tear his secrets out from the inside. I didn't sleep at all. While Rachel lay in my old guest room breathing shallowly, I sat at my desk and dug into every scrap of public information I could find. Adam Harper, young, successful entrepreneur, polished company website, smiling photos from charity galas. His mother, Margaret Harper, appeared in countless society columns, always in elegant dresses, always at some fundraising lunch. On paper, they were perfect. No lawsuits, no scandals, no hint of what Rachel had just escaped. When she woke up with a small cry at dawn, disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling, I brought her tea and told her something that made her eyes go wide with fear. I told her my plan. "We're going to switch," I said. "You disappear somewhere safe, somewhere he can't find you. I go back to that house pretending to be you. I find out what this inheritance is, what he's hiding, why he'd rather keep you as a prisoner than let you go. I get proof, and then we destroy him properly, in court, not just on social media." Rachel grabbed my wrist, nails digging into my skin. "No, absolutely not. You're insane, Claire. He's not human. He's a monster. And it's not just him. His mother lives with us now. She watches everything. She gives me calming tea every night. I don't even know what's in it. If you run, he'll hunt you," I said softly, squeezing her hands. "If you go to the police now, all they'll see are bruises. He'll hire the best lawyers. He'll say you're unstable, that you fell down the stairs, that you attacked him first. He'll walk out in a day, and then you'll never be safe. We can't just run. We have to cut his throat with his own knife." That was when I stopped seeing my twin as my little sister and started seeing her as the only witness I had. For the next 4 hours, I interrogated her like an investigator, memorizing every detail of her life in that house. "How does he call you? What do you call him in front of his mom? Where does he keep his office? Is it locked? Who else lives there? What time does he drink his coffee? How does he like it? Which eye do you unconsciously squint when you're confused?" She told me everything. The layout of the house, the side entrance the maid used, the code to the main gate she'd once glimpsed, the fact that Adam had moved her out of the master bedroom months ago and into a narrow guest room, keeping her close but separate, the way his mother would show up each night with herbal tea or warm milk that always made her foggy and slow. Then came the physical part. We were the same height, same build, and we already shared a face, but that wasn't enough. Rachel's clothes were plain, long, and dull because Adam hated anything bright. My wardrobe was all sharp blazers and tailored pants. I pulled on her faded long dress and a simple cardigan, then stood in front of the mirror. "My hair's a little longer than yours," I said, picking up the scissors. She flinched, but I didn't hesitate. I cut my hair to match hers, then smudged dark concealer under my eyes to make myself look exhausted. I practiced walking with my shoulders slightly rounded, my voice softer, my gaze lowered. We had one last piece to arrange, where Rachel would hide. I owned a tiny studio across town that I'd used as an office before upgrading apartments. No one knew the address except me and my old landlord. I stocked it with groceries using a same-day delivery app and handed Rachel a cheap new phone with only my number programmed in. "Destroy your old one. Don't call anyone but me. Don't post. Don't go out. Just rest and heal," I told her. She nodded, tears thick in her eyes. At the door, she hugged me so hard it hurt. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I admitted, but I'm even angrier. Let me handle him. And hey, if you haven't done it yet, hit that like button and share this video. Stories like this might help someone you know." I ordered a rideshare for her and watched from the window as she left in oversized sunglasses and a mask, hiding every bruise she could. When the car vanished into traffic, it felt like some invisible cord between us snapped. I went back to the mirror one last time. The woman looking back at me looked nothing like Claire the designer. She looked like Rachel, drained, anxious, small. I picked up her worn tote bag, stuffed with the few clothes she'd brought, and called another car, this time setting the destination to a convenience store 2 blocks away from Adam's house. I needed to arrive as if I'd wandered back on foot after fleeing into the night. The drive felt endless. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it over the windshield wipers. When the car dropped me off, I stepped out into the wet chill and saw his street in the distance. The Harper house rose behind high black gates, a mansion of white stone and glass that screamed money in cold precision. As I approached, the security guard at the side gate barely reacted. He buzzed me in with a blank look, as if a battered daughter-in-law limping home at dawn was just another Tuesday. That was my first clue. Everyone here had been trained not to see, not to hear, not to ask questions. Inside, the hallway was all polished marble and freezing air conditioning. The place smelled like lemon floor cleaner and something faintly chemical, like a hospital. My reflection stared back at me from the gleaming floors, pale and hollow-eyed in Rachel's clothes. From the family room, I heard the soft murmur of a TV. I walked toward it with small, unsure steps, letting my shoulders shake. Adam was on the white leather sofa in casual shorts and a polo shirt, a tablet in his hands, looking like he'd just stepped out of an ad. The TV was on, but he wasn't watching it. He didn't look up when I stopped in the doorway. "Done with your walk?" he asked, voice flat and mocking. Every cell in my body screamed to grab something heavy and smash it over his head. Instead, I lowered my gaze, just like Rachel would have. I'm sorry. I just needed air," I whispered. Only then did he lift his eyes. He looked me over, from the dried blood at the corner of my mouth to the bruising along my jaw. His expression was not guilt or concern. It was annoyance, as if he were assessing a damaged piece of furniture. He stood and came closer. I forced myself not to meet his eyes. He hooked a finger under my chin and lifted my face, studying the bruises with clinical interest. "Those will scar if we don't treat them," he said mildly. "Go shower. You smell like the street." He released me with a little flick of his hand and went back to his tablet. To him, the crisis was over. His runaway pet had returned to her cage. I had just turned toward the stairs when a soft voice floated from the kitchen. "Rachel, dear, where have you been?" Adam's mother appeared, moving quickly but gracefully, wrapped in a silk house robe. She looked exactly like the photos I'd seen online. Perfectly styled gray hair, expensive but subtle makeup, warm smile. But her eyes were something else entirely, sharp, cold, calculating. They swept over every bruise, every rip, every shiver. "We were so worried. You must be freezing," she crooned, guiding me to the dining table. She set a steaming glass in front of me. "Warm milk with a little honey. It will calm you down," she said, her voice honey-sweet. I leaned closer. Beneath the sugar and vanilla, I caught a bitter medicinal tang. Rachel had told me about this. The teas, the milks, the juices that left her disoriented and foggy. I couldn't refuse outright. That would raise questions. So I picked up the glass with trembling hands. As I lifted it, I let my body jolt as if a sharp pain had hit my split lip. "Ow!" I hissed and my elbow slipped. The glass tipped over, warm milk spilling across the perfect table and dripping onto the marble. I gasped and stammered apologies. For a heartbeat, Margaret's eyes flashed pure rage, raw and unmasked. Then her smile snapped back into place. "Oh dear, how clumsy," she said softly, though her tone had gone a shade colder. "It's all right. The maid will clean it." In the family room, Adam let out a sigh of irritation. "Clean yourself up and get out of my sight until dinner," he called. I fled upstairs to the small guest room Rachel had described, the one that felt more like a cell than a bedroom. As I shut the door, I heard footsteps pause outside. Two voices murmured on the other side. Margaret's was no longer gentle. "We'll have to increase the dose. She's starting to resist." "She's not that clever," Adam muttered. "She's just clumsy. I don't care how you do it. She needs to be ready before the heirs' meeting next week. I'm not letting Grandpa's company slip into her idiot hands." "Relax," Margaret replied. "By next week she won't even remember her own name." Their footsteps receded. I stood in the middle of the tidy little room, staring at the neat, impersonal furniture. No photos, no knickknacks, no sign that a living person slept there. It was a cage designed to look like a guest room. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the understanding that this wasn't just abuse. This was a long, careful plan to erase my sister's mind. The next 3 days were a carefully crafted nightmare. Every morning I shuffled out, head bowed, to make Adam's black coffee exactly the way he liked it and leave it on the table without meeting his eyes. Margaret floated around the house like a nurse in a private asylum, appearing at random with herbal teas, smoothies, and tonics. "You look pale, dear. Drink this." I took every glass, every cup, carried them to my room, and poured them into the potted plant in the corner. The leaves began to curl and turn brown, but I kept doing it. At the same time, I leaned into their narrative. I moved a little slower. I forgot where I'd put things. Sometimes I'd answer a beat too late. While I played the docile, unraveling wife, I watched and waited. Adam left for the office at 9 sharp and usually returned around 7. Margaret had charity lunches or spa appointments most days between late morning and mid-afternoon. The maid, a nervous woman in her 50s, came in the morning and left by 4, keeping her head down, never meeting my eyes. That gave me a narrow window, an hour, sometimes less, when I was alone upstairs. On the 4th day, I used it. As soon as the front door clicked behind Margaret and the maid's radio music drifted faintly from the back of the house, I slipped out of my room and into Margaret's suite. It smelled like lavender and expensive perfume and something sterile. Her vanity drawers were full of cosmetics and jewelry, arranged with obsessive neatness. The bottom drawer held a small locked wooden box. I didn't have time to search for the key. I slid a bobby pin from under my scarf and knelt. My dad had been a watch repairman. He taught us how tiny mechanisms worked and, as a joke, how to open simple locks. My fingers remembered. After a few tense seconds, there was a soft click. Inside the box were no pearls or keepsakes, just rows of prescription bottles. Every label bore Rachel's full legal name. High-dose tranquilizers, strong antipsychotics, benzodiazepines that in combination could cause confusion, memory loss, paranoia, and eventually a near catatonic state. Exactly what Rachel had been turning into. I snapped pictures of every bottle, every label, every prescribing doctor with a cheap burner phone I'd smuggled under my mattress. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, relocked the box and slid it into the drawer. My next target was Adam's study. The heavy wooden door upstairs looked ordinary, but the sleek fingerprint scanner and keypad beside it said otherwise. No hairpins would help me there. I stared at the panel, frustrated, until my eye caught the small desk and calendar in the hallway outside. On Friday of that week, circled in red, were 2 words: Heirs meeting, followed by 10 a.m. I photographed the calendar too. Whatever they were planning would happen that day. I was pocketing the phone when the sound I'd been dreading echoed up from downstairs, the garage door groaning open, a car engine cutting off. Adam was home early. Panic surged through me. I sprinted on silent feet back to my room, dove onto the bed, and yanked the blanket up just as his footsteps hit the stairs. The doorknob rattled, locked. He banged on it hard. "Rachel, open the door." I jerked upright, letting my voice come out hoarse and confused. "Adam, I was sleeping. My head hurts." I staggered to the door, fumbling with the lock as if disoriented. When it swung open, his face was flushed with anger, his eyes sweeping the room. "Why is the door locked?" he hissed. "I was scared," I mumbled, clutching my temples. "Ever since your mom's milk this morning, my head's been spinning." His expression shifted, not to sympathy, but to a dark, satisfied sort of calm. "Don't ever lock this door again," he said quietly. "You don't need privacy. You need supervision." He stalked away toward his study. I closed the door and let out a slow, shaky breath. I had evidence of the drugs and the date of the meeting, but I still didn't know the why. The motive, that would be in his study. Getting a code or fingerprint without him noticing seemed impossible, until I remembered something Rachel had said, how he'd screamed for an hour because she'd dropped a book and might have scratched the floor. Adam hated mess. He hated stains. He hated anything out of place. So I used that. 2 days later, when both Margaret and the maid were home but distracted, I filled the tallest glass I could find with orange juice and carried it upstairs on a tray, pretending to be in a drugged daze. In the hallway, right beside the keypad to his study, I tripped. The glass flew from the tray, shattering on the marble, juice splashing across the wall and dripping directly onto the keypad. I fell with it, covering my face. I'm sorry, I babbled. The study door flew open. Adam stormed out in gym shorts, clearly having been napping. When he saw the sticky mess on his precious keypad, His anger shifted to alarm. "You idiot!" he snapped, shoving my hands away as I reached toward the keypad with a tissue. "Don't touch it. You'll make it worse." He grabbed a clean cloth from a nearby shelf and leaned in to wipe down the panel, muttering about how expensive the system was. My head was bowed, my shoulders shaking, but my eyes watched through my lashes. After he dried it, he pressed his thumb to the scanner and then, just to be sure the system still worked, punched in the code quickly. My pulse pounded so loud I could barely hear the soft beeps, but I forced myself to count. 194580. A green light flashed. The lock clicked. "Do not come near this door again," he snarled, hauling me to my feet. Now I had the key to his lair. I just needed an empty house. That chance came the night before the heirs' meeting. Over dinner, Adam's phone rang. His expression soured as he listened. "An unannounced audit at the plant? Tonight?" he barked. He hung up swearing. "I have to go," he told Margaret. "Some idiot on the board ordered a surprise inspection. I might be gone all night." "What about tomorrow?" she demanded. "The meeting. I'll be back. Just make sure Rachel gets a double dose tonight. I want her completely out of it in the morning. No surprises." Then he turned to me. "Try not to embarrass me before you forget how to form sentences." He left in a storm of slammed doors and screeching tires. As soon as his taillights disappeared, Margaret turned her attention to me. "You'll be useful for once," she said briskly, rifling through a drawer. She scribbled a list. "The organic market over on Riverside, yes, that one, has everything I need for the special drink you'll have before the meeting. Ginseng, certain teas, specific honey. It's across town, but you can order a car. Don't you dare run. I will know." She shoved a wad of cash into my hand and practically pushed me toward the door. I ordered a car, stepped outside, and waited by the gate as if I were leaving. 5 minutes later, I watched Margaret's own car pull out of the garage and glide away. She clearly didn't trust the courier with whatever else she needed to prepare. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I canceled my ride and slipped back through the gate. The security guard looked up, startled. "Forgot my wallet," I said, touching my forehead. He shrugged and went back to his phone. Inside, the house felt unnaturally quiet, the silence ringing in my ears. No cars in the garage, no voices. For the first time since I'd entered, I was completely alone. I ran upstairs, my heart battering against my ribs, and stopped in front of Adam's study door. My fingers shook as I typed the code. 194580. Beep, 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 green. The lock clicked. I slipped inside and shut the door behind me, leaving the overhead light off. The study smelled like leather and expensive tobacco. Dark wood shelves lined the walls, filled with books that looked more decorative than read. I didn't waste time. Behind Adam's massive desk hung a large abstract painting I'd always suspected was more than decor. I gripped both sides and pushed. It swung aside on silent hinges, revealing a digital safe set into the wall. Of course. I tried the same code as the door. Red light. Wrong. I tried his birth year, his parents' anniversary, even the day of his wedding to Rachel. Nothing. Frustration clawed at me. Then I remembered Rachel describing Grandpa Henry, his disapproval of Margaret, his quiet kindness toward her. This safe wasn't about Adam's ego. It was about his grandfather's legacy. I entered Rachel's birthday, month and day only, the 4 digits she'd written on so many forms growing up. The safe beeped once, then flashed green. The door swung open. Inside were no stacks of cash, no jewelry, just a thick blue folder and a sealed envelope with neat handwriting on the front, for Rachel only. My hands went to the folder first. It contained a certified copy of the last will and testament of Henry Harper, Adam's grandfather, founder of the company. I skimmed, my eyes jumping from clause to clause. There it was. All of Henry's personal assets, his house, his savings, went to Adam and Margaret. But 80% of his company's shares, the true heart of his wealth, were left entirely to his granddaughter-in-law, Rachel. I had to read the sentence 3 times to believe it. Not to Adam, to Rachel. Then I saw the trap. Beneath the main clause, in smaller print, was a condition. The transfer would be finalized at a formal heirs meeting where Rachel had to appear in person and sign acceptance papers. However, if at that meeting she were legally and medically declared mentally incompetent to manage the assets, full guardianship over the shares would pass automatically to her husband, Adam Harper. My hands trembled, not from fear but from fury. They weren't just beating her out of cruelty. They were breaking her mind on purpose, turning her into a legal puppet so Adam could steal the company designed to go to her. I opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Henry himself. "My dear Rachel," it began, "if you're reading this, it means you found the safe, and that may also mean you are in danger. I saw kindness in you in a house full of snakes. I left you these shares so you could free yourself from my foolish grandson and his mother. My hope was that you would take control, divorce him, and build a better life. But I know their greed. If they try to use the incompetency clause against you, there is one last safeguard. My real family lawyer, Mr. Bennett, holds the original will and proof that Adam and Margaret stole from the company while I was ill. Go to him. Show him this letter. Trust him." Tears blurred my vision for a moment. Then I forced myself to move. I photographed every page of the will, every line of the letter, every signature and stamp. I put them back exactly as I'd found them, shut the safe, swung the painting into place, and turned off the desk lamp. As I slipped out of the study and shut the door, I heard the garage door grinding open downstairs. Margaret was back. I sprinted to my room, yanked off my shoes, and was sitting on the bed, breathing heavily, when her footsteps came up the stairs. She didn't bother to knock, just opened the door with a sharp twist. Her eyes narrowed. "You're sweaty. Why?" "The store was closed," I mumbled, making my voice thin and wobbly. I ran back. It was dark. She stared at me for a long, cold moment, then seemed to reach a decision. "Fine. We'll have to make do with what we have. Here." She thrust a large glass of murky juice toward me. It smelled faintly fruity and strongly chemical. "Your husband wants you calm tomorrow," she said. "This is a double dose. You will drink every last drop in front of me. There would be no slipping away, no watering plants. If I refused, everything I'd done would explode. If I drank, I'd become exactly what they wanted. A living corpse they could wheel into a meeting." I stared at the glass, then at her eyes. They were bright with triumph. They thought they'd already won. "Fine," I thought. "I'll give you the show you want." I lifted the glass slowly, holding it near my lips. As I did, I let my gaze slide past her, over her shoulder, to the blank wall behind her. I widened my eyes, letting horror creep over my face. My hand began to shake so violently some of the juice sloshed over the rim. "No," I whispered. Margaret frowned. "What are you doing?" "Drink." "Don't let him hit me again," I whispered, still staring at the wall. "Please don't let him. His eyes, they look like a snake's." Her instinct was immediate. She glanced back over her shoulder. The wall was empty, of course. When she turned back, I was already sliding down the wall, clutching my knees, the glass still in my hand. "They're everywhere," I muttered, rocking back and forth. "Snakes in the walls, in the milk, in your eyes. You're babbling nonsense," she snapped, reaching for the glass, maybe to force it down my throat herself. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. I jerked my arm and flung the glass, not at the floor, but at the wall just to the side of her. It smashed, sending shards and sticky liquid across the marble and all over her silk robe. I screamed, high and raw, the way I'd heard patients scream in hospital dramas. "Get them off me! Get them off!" I clawed at my arms, at invisible creatures only I could see. For a long second, Margaret just stared at the stain spreading across her expensive robe. Then her composure shattered. "You're insane," she hissed, voice trembling with fury and something like satisfaction. "Completely insane." She grabbed my arm with bony fingers and hauled me to my feet. "You'll stay in here until tomorrow. I don't want to hear a sound from you." She shoved me into the guest room, slammed the door, and I heard the scrape and click of a key turning in the lock from the outside. Footsteps stormed away down the hall. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. I had avoided the drugs. I had all the proof I needed, but now I was locked in, and the meeting was in the morning. I crawled to the bed, reached under the pillow, and pulled out the little burner phone. There was only one number in it. I called. Rachel picked up on the third ring. "Claire?" I heard shouting. "What happened?" I talked fast, my voice low. I told her about the will, about the clause that gave her the company, and the twisted condition that would hand it back to Adam if she were declared incompetent. About the safe, the folder, the letter from Grandpa Henry. She went quiet, a broken sob catching in her throat. After everything he's done to me, and all this time, that company was supposed to be mine. It still is, I said, but we're out of time. Tomorrow at 10, they're going to drag me into that boardroom and use a fake medical report to prove you're insane. So what do we do? She whispered. I'm locked in up here. I can't stop them from going through the motions. But Grandpa gave us one more ally, his real lawyer, Mr. Bennett. I'm texting you his office address and the photos of the will, the prescriptions, the letter. Tonight, right now, you're going to him. You're going to walk into his office, show him everything, and use the phrase Grandpa wrote at the end of his letter. Tell him the snakes finally bit. He'll understand. Rachel was silent for a moment, then her voice came back harder, steadier. I'm scared, she admitted, but I'm more tired than scared. I'm tired of letting him win. Send me the address. I sent everything, then wiped the photos from my phone and powered it off. I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the house. Garage door opening sometime after midnight. Low voices in the hallway as Adam came home and Margaret excitedly told him about my episode. In the morning, around 8, the key turned in my door. Adam and his mother stood there dressed in flawless suits, ready for victory. It's time, he said flatly. I let my shoulders sag and my gaze drift. I shuffled when they tugged my arm, stumbled on the stairs, muttered nonsense under my breath. In the car, Margaret held my wrist like a nurse escorting a dangerous patient. I stared out the window at the city racing by, silently praying that Rachel had found Mr. Bennett, that he'd believed her, that they were already on their way. The law firm was on the 30th floor of a glass tower, all polished wood and chrome. They sat me at one side of a long conference table. Across from us were two corporate lawyers in immaculate suits. One of them, with slicked back hair and a rehearsed smile, introduced himself as Mr. Lawson, representing the Harper family's interests. Beside him sat a nervous-looking man with a doctor's bag, Dr. Armitage, the psychiatrist they'd bought. Mr. Lawson began with practiced solemnity. We're here to execute the final wishes of the late Henry Harper regarding the transfer of 80% of his shares. He glanced at me with fake sympathy. The designated heir is Mrs. Rachel Harper. However, we've been informed there may be concerns about her mental competence. Unfortunately, yes, Dr. Armitage said, shuffling papers. I've been treating Mrs. Harper for several months at the family's request. She exhibits severe paranoia, delusions, breakdowns. Just last night, she had an episode of violent hallucinations. He placed a document on the table. This is my formal opinion that she is not mentally fit to manage significant assets. Lawson took the paper, nodded, and turned back to us. In light of this, and in accordance with the clause in Mr. Harper's will, guardianship of the shares will pass to her husband, Adam Harper, who will manage them for the family's benefit. Margaret patted my limp hand theatrically. We'll take good care of everything for you, dear, she said loudly. That was the moment Lawson picked up his pen to sign. I object. The voice came from the doorway, calm, firm, and carrying the kind of authority that makes people sit up a little straighter. Everyone turned. There, framed by the open door, stood an older man in a perfectly cut suit, silver hair, sharp eyes behind thin glasses. Beside him, wearing a pale blue headscarf and a simple blazer, stood a woman whose face mirrored my own. Rachel, not broken, not drugged, but very much alive and very much herself. For a split second, the room froze. Dr. Armitage's jaw dropped. Lawson half rose from his chair. Margaret went gray. Adam's eyes snapped back and forth between me and the doorway, as if his brain had short-circuited. There are two of them, Margaret whispered. She's hallucinating for real now. I lifted my head fully for the first time, brushing the hair out of my face. I met Adam's stunned stare and let him see the clarity in my eyes. Hi, Adam, I said, my real voice ringing through the room. Surprise. He recoiled. You're not Rachel, he said slowly. No, I agreed, standing. I'm Claire, her twin. The older man walked to the head of the table. I'm Daniel Bennett, he said calmly, Mr. Harper's actual attorney and the executor of his original will. And this, he gestured to Rachel, is the real Mrs. Rachel Harper, the rightful heir. The room erupted. Protests from Lawson, sputtering denials from Dr. Armitage, Margaret's high-pitched accusations. Adam lurched to his feet, pointing wildly. "This is fraud. They're trying to scam us. Call security." Mr. Bennett didn't raise his voice. He simply opened his laptop and connected it to the conference room screen. "Let's talk about fraud," he said. The first image to appear on the wall-mounted display was a series of clear photos. Prescription bottles lined in a box, labels showing Rachel's name and the dosages. "Here," Bennett said, "is evidence that Mrs. Harper was being systematically drugged with heavy sedatives and antipsychotics prescribed by doctors on your payroll without proper documentation, enough to induce the very symptoms Dr. Armitage describes." Another click, another slide, the original will, unmarred by sneaky redrafts, with the clause leaving 80% of the company directly to Rachel. "This," Bennett continued, "is the real will Mr. Harper signed in my office, not the selective summary you handed to Mr. Lawson." Next came bank statements and internal company reports that mapped out years of siphoned funds. "These are records of embezzlement," Bennett said matter-of-factly. "Transfers from company accounts to shell corporations controlled by Adam and Margaret Harper while Henry Harper was bedridden. He suspected you and asked me to investigate before he died. He also asked me to safeguard this evidence in case his worst fears came true." Finally, Bennett played an audio recording, Adam's voice, crystal clear, saying, "I don't care what it costs. Make sure the incompetency report is ready by Friday. That old man thinks he can beat me from the grave. He's dead wrong." When the recording cut off, the silence in the room was almost painful. Lawson quietly closed his folder and pushed his chair back, as if trying to blend into the wallpaper. Dr. Armitage began stammering excuses about pressure and family concerns. At that moment, the conference door opened again. 2 uniformed officers stepped in. Bennett nodded toward Adam and Margaret. "Officers, these are the individuals we discussed. There's ample evidence of domestic abuse, attempted fraud, attempted poisoning, and financial crimes. I believe it's time." Adam exploded. "You can't do this. This is a setup," he shouted, trying to pull away as one of the officers took his arm and drew out handcuffs. "They're the crazy ones. They tricked me." The officer was unmoved. "Mr. Harper, you're under arrest," he said, snapping the cuffs around Adam's wrists. The sharp metallic click sounded like a door slamming shut on years of terror. Margaret sagged back in her chair as the second officer approached. Her voice, once so smooth, came out thin and venomous. "You should have gone crazy," she hissed at Rachel. "You should have stayed broken. You were supposed to be our asset, not our enemy." The officer helped her to her feet and recited her rights. A third officer entered to escort a trembling, pale Dr. Armitage from the room, his medical license effectively finished. Bennett looked at Lawson. "As for you, counselor, the ethics board will be very interested in your role here," he said. Lawson swallowed hard. "I relied on information my client provided," he murmured, already trying to distance himself. Bennett turned back to us, and for the first time he smiled. "Henry Harper was never a fool," he said quietly. "He knew exactly who deserved his legacy." There was one more twist. Bennett pulled out the original will again and flipped to the last page. "Mr. Harper anticipated that Adam and Margaret might try something like this," he said. "So he added a final clause. If Adam or Margaret are ever convicted of crimes involving coercion, violence, or fraud against Rachel, any other inheritance they were granted, house, savings, personal assets, will be revoked and transferred to the Henry Harper Foundation." Adam had gone from furious to hollow as the officer led him toward the door. At that news, even the last traces of swagger fell away. Not only had he failed to steal Rachel's shares, he and his mother had just lost everything they already had. They walked out of that boardroom in handcuffs, and they would never be that rich again. Months later, in a crowded courtroom, a judge read out the sentences. Adam was found guilty beyond doubt of repeated aggravated domestic violence, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. He received 20 years in prison. Margaret got 15 for her role in the poisoning, the cover-up, and the embezzlement. Dr. Armitage was sentenced to 5 years and stripped of his medical license for life. There was no cheering from us, no dramatic collapse. Rachel and I sat side by side in the gallery, our hands clasped together, listening as if we were finally closing a book that had haunted us for too long. When the gavel came down for the last time, it felt less like victory and more like a long, shuddering exhale. 2 months after that, the view was very different. a sunlit boardroom at the top of the company Henry had built. At the head of the table sat Rachel, no longer the frightened woman who'd stumbled into my apartment at midnight. She wore a simple cream blazer and spoke to the directors with calm authority. "We can't pretend the last few years didn't happen," she said. "Our first priority is transparency. I want a full audit of the finance department and every withheld bonus released to the employees who earned them." The older board members, who had once been loyal to Henry, nodded in approval. In her, they saw echoes of the founder, principled, fair, stubborn in all the right ways. I sat at her right, a laptop open in front of me. Rachel had asked me to head the company's creative and communications team, reshaping its public image to match the values it should have had all along. We worked well together, two halves of the same face finally pulling in the same direction. Somewhere across town, in a hot prison yard, Adam might have seen a news segment about the unexpected new CEO who inherited her late grandfather-in-law's empire and thrown whatever he was holding at the screen. But that life was behind us now. His old mansion, the one with the high black gates and marble floors, was on the market, the listing stamped with a giant red "for sale" sign. When the house finally sold, Rachel knew exactly what she wanted to do with the money. A few months later, in a quieter neighborhood on the edge of the city, we stood in front of a freshly painted building, the same soft white and green as hope. Above the entrance hung a new sign: the Claire and Rachel Center, legal and psychological support for survivors of domestic abuse. Cameras flashed as Rachel stepped up to the small podium. "I'm not standing here today as some powerful CEO," she told the crowd. "I'm standing here as a survivor. For years I thought I had no one. I thought the person who hurt me was the only one who really knew me. I was wrong. My twin sister walked into hell for me and walked back out with proof of the truth." She turned and smiled at me before facing the audience again. "Not everyone has a twin crazy enough to infiltrate a monster's house. That's why we built this place. So that anyone who feels trapped, alone, or disbelieved has somewhere to go. People who'll fight with them and for them, legally and emotionally. If one story can change one life, that's already enough." Together we cut the ribbon. We didn't erase the past. We planted something new on top of it. We turned bruises and courtrooms and locked doors into a refuge and a weapon against people like Adam and Margaret. And if you've stayed with me to the end of this story, tell me in the comments what part hit you hardest. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You never know who might need to hear that there is always a way out, and sometimes a way to fight back.